Cyberpunk Uncensored.
Hey, what's up everybody? This Cyberpunk Red crash course tutorial video is all about the different ammunition types in Cyberpunk Red. So let's get right into it. You can see in the book they basically have this chart that lists all the different ammunition types and then all the prices. And remember that the prices are broken down into these categories, and that comes into play in a few different ways. But in this case, the main thing to remember is that you can source most items up to premium. Anything above that, like these ammunition types that are listed as expensive, you need the help of a fixer or their night market, his or hers night market. I go over that in the night market crash course video, but just keep that in mind. So, and also that's, GM discretion as well. So keep that in mind too, that, in the time of red, things are hard to source. So maybe even like a cheap item, you might not be able to find regularly. So it's up to the GM and the current campaign you're playing or whatever. But typically, anything up through premium, you can find. Anything above that, you need a fixer at night market. But let's get right into the different ammunition types. So these prices, it's per 10. Bullets are typically sold in groups of 10, unless it's, a rocket or a grenade. So keep that in mind too, that all these prices are per 10. In ammunition packs or whatever. So the first one here is basic ammunition. Basic, it doesn't have any type of special features or anything. It's just basic ammo. Armor piercing is the next one listed. Armor piercing works like this. Basically, anytime you deal damage, instead of ablating the SP, the stopping points, the stopping power of the armor by 1 point, you're going to ablate it by 2 points. So armor piercing ablates armor by 2 points. Remember that. The next thing is biotoxin ammunition. And also keep in mind in Cyberpunk Red, you'll see in the book when it describes each one of these things, it'll have the price, the ammunition type. It'll describe like how I'm explaining, the special features of each ammunition. But it also lists which weapons or whatever, these are ammunition types that these can go to. So like basic ammunition, it works with everything except for grenades and rockets. Obviously, you're not getting those in groups of 10, Armor piercing, it works with everything except for shotgun shells. So all armor is armor all ammo, I should say, is armor piercing, except for shotgun shells. And keep in mind that's how grenades and rockets work too. They're both considered armor piercing. So when you deal damage from a grenade, a frag grenade, or a rocket, you're going to ablate armor by 2. It's considered armor piercing. But when you get to biotoxin ammunition, that only works with arrows and grenades. It doesn't work with any other type of ammo, any other type of weapon other than arrows for bows and grenades. But biotoxin ammunition works like this. Instead of dealing damage with a successful hit, basically the target's going to have to beat a DV of 15, resist torture and drugs check. And if they fail that, they automatically get 3d6 damage directly to their HP. So that can be pretty devastating. The next one is EMP ammunition. Now this one is also DV based, meaning that if it's a successful attack, you're not gonna roll damage. The target's gonna basically try to beat the DV of 15 cyber tech check. And if they fail that, the GM decides, 2 pieces of cybernetics, cyber limbs or whatever, any cyberware that does, basically becomes inoperable. It just won't work anymore. And if it's a cyber limb, it's treated the same way as a dismembered limb in the critical injury table, in that the limb, it's not going to be detached or anything, but it's going to go limp. Anything that your arms are holding are obviously going to be dropped. If it's a leg, you're going to fall prone. So it works like that. And EMP ammunition works with grenades only. So remember that, only grenades. The next one is expansive ammunition. And expansive ammunition only works with arrows, bullets, and slugs. And when using this ammunition, this one's pretty interesting. It basically works like this. If anytime you use the ammunition, if you get a critical injury, which is rolling 2 6s on your damage, Remember, that's with arrows, bullets, and slugs. If you come up with 2 sixes, the target has to roll on the critical injury table. Now, if they get the foreign object critical injury when using expansive ammunition, then they roll a second time on the critical injury table until they get some. If they get foreign object again, they roll again. It has to be a different critical injury other than foreign object. But if they get the foreign object injury critical table critical injury, they have to roll a second critical injury. Man, that can be devastating. Now, the chances of that seem kind of rare. How often are you going to come up with 2 sixes? It's not that often, but it can definitely happen. It happened a lot in our last game stream, so that was a lot of fun. But when it happens and it hits on that foreign object critical injury, they're getting a secondary critical injury, and that can really mess up a target. Now, they don't get the additional 5 points of damage. The critical injury is basically just, the mod or whatever that comes with that critical injury. But you're not going to get that extra damage. So just keep that in mind as well. Now, the next thing on the list is Flashbang Ammunition. Now, Flashbang Ammunition works with grenades only, just like EMP. And in this case, again, you're not dealing the damage. The target's going to have to beat the DV of 15, resist torture and drugs. And if they fail that, they basically get the same critical injury from damage that from the damaged ear critical injury. And they get that for the next minute. So, man, that can be really messed up. And they get the damaged eye as well. So, Flashbang Grenade, they're basically going to get a -2 to any perception checks that involve visuals, and then they're going to get that -2 to any perception checks involving trying to hear something, any audio things, and also a damaged ear on the critical injury table basically means they can't. They can if they move beyond 4 meters, which is 2 squares on a map. Each square is a 2 meter. Remember that if you're playing with a map. But if they move beyond 4 meters in their move, their next turn, they can't take a move action because of that damaged ear. I imagine that has something to do with the inner ear and balance and things like that. But man, that can be devastating. And remember that these critical injuries from this flashbang, it lasts for the next minute, just like the EMP. I should mention that when those 2 cyber limbs don't work, it's for the next minute. And you got to remember that each round, each team's turns that are all happening at the same time, each round is considered 3 seconds. So it's going to be a whole, 20 rounds, you getting 20 turns with these critical injuries from the flashbang or the EMP, any of these, it lasts a minute. Man, that can really mess up your gameplay. The next one is Incendiary Ammunition, which is basically putting you on fire. So anytime that you deal damage through the target's armor, they're going to catch on fire. And they're going to basically get an extra 2 points of damage directly to their HP at the end of their turn. And they're going to have to use their action to put out the fire. So that's what Incendiary Ammunition does. Poison Ammunition works very similar to Biotoxin, except the DV is 13, resist torture and drugs. And if they fail that, then they get 2d6 damage, not 3d6 like in Biotoxin. So Poison, it's a lower DV and lower damage. And it only works with arrows and grenades. And I should add that Incendiary Ammunition pretty much works with everything, except for, I think it's shotgun shells it doesn't work with. Incendiary ammo doesn't work with shotgun slugs. So keep that in mind. Incendiary, if the flammable ones, it works with arrows, bullets, grenades, and shotgun shells, but not slugs and not rockets. The poison ammunition, however, works with arrows and grenades only. So not a lot of diversity there. But a lot of these only work with a couple different types, and I think that's what makes them interesting and diverse. And those are the nuances of how they work. Rubber ammunition, that's basically when you don't want to kill somebody because you're still basically doing injury. You can't cause critical injuries, but if you through that damage of those rubber bullets of whatever you're using them on, and they can work with arrows, bullets, and slugs. Keep that in mind. They don't work with shells or grenades and things like that. They only work with arrows, bullets, and slugs. But if you reduce the target's HP down to 0, they're actually left with 1 instead of 0. So it's basically a non-lethal ammunition. So if you ever need that in Cyberpunk, which is typically rare, but if you do need it, you say you need to take someone down but not out because you need to capture them or something along those lines. Rubber ammunition is what you're going to want to use. The next thing is sleep ammunition, and sleep works with arrows and grenades. I picture it as like a liquid or a gas or something like that, and it works just like poison and biotoxin and such, just like EMP2, where they've got to beat a DV of 13. There's a DV to beat, so instead of doing damage, they're basically trying to beat a DV of 13, resist torture and drugs, and if they fail, they basically fall asleep for the next minute. They fall prone to the ground and they fall asleep, which means, and that's for a whole minute, which means when they wake up, they're prone. They got to use an action to get up or beat a DV13 if they have a martial arts to just kind of get up without taking an action. I go over that in the martial arts breakdown video. But yeah, sleep ammunition. The only other way that they can wake up is if they take damage during that minute or someone like physically wakes them up. Otherwise, they're asleep and prone for a full minute. The next one is smart ammunition. This is probably my favorite one. It's probably the most intense because... and first, let me say it works with arrows, bullets, and rockets. But basically, when you shoot at a target, if you miss the target by 4 or less points, you basically get to hit, you have a second chance to hit them. That bullet is basically, getting a second chance. Except on that next roll, you're not going to involve, your stat and skill and all that. You're just basically going to take a 10 plus the 1d10. With the exception of luck. You can always add luck, but it's basically going to be 10 plus 1d10, and then if you want to add luck, and that's going to go against the DV or the contested roll of evade by the target. Remember, if they have a reflex of 8 or higher, they can always try to evade on this ranged attack. But smart ammunition basically gives you a second chance to hit if you miss by 4 or less points. But just remember, it's only a 10 plus 1d10. You're not, involving your stats and skills and stuff. But you can throw some luck in there. And that can really be handy. As I've seen in the last handful of sessions that we've done, our net runner and in our one shot recently that we did, I think it was our fixer or somebody, they kept putting luck, and they were making successful attacks and actions by the amount of points that they put in luck. So it was very lucky that they used luck and got it just right. But yeah, the last two things here, let's go over these on the chart. The next one is smoke ammunition. Now, smoke, remember, smoke and tear gas both, they're basically grenades. You got to think of them like that. But smoke ammunition, when that goes off, it's going to fill a 10 meter by 10 meter area with smoke, and then anybody in that smoke is going to get a -4 to anything that they're trying to do because of that smoke. So it's basically just messing up the area with smoke and causing that -4 mod to any actions, anything that they want to do. The last one here is tear gas, and that works very similar to smoke. Except you got to beat a DV13, resist torture and drugs. It's going to fill up that area, but the target, instead of taking damage, it's that DV13 resist torture and drugs, or they're getting the critical eye injury. So then they're going to have that -2 to perception on anything visual that they're trying to do perception-wise, and that's going to last for a minute. So that's really going to, mess up their eyes. Just like tear gas would. So that's how it works. So anyways, check out Cyberpunk Red in the core book. You'll get more detail on all this. I just like to be kind of quick on these crash course videos and just get to the point of how these work and the little details. But obviously when you read in the book, there's more detail about these things. But just remember, on the chart here, you got the ammunition type, you've got the cost. That's broken up into the sections. You can get up to premium typically anywhere. Anything above that, you need a fix or a night market. And then in the book, you'll see they list each one, and it's going to tell exactly how I explained, how each ammo type works. And then it's going to also explain what weapons it'll work with. So just make sure you check all that out, because all those details matter. But as you can see, there's a lot of diversity in ammo types, and it even goes beyond that. Let me add, check out the tech and maker rollability breakdown crash course video that I made. Because if you're a tech or a tech, you can also invent ammo types. So keep that in mind. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Techs can invent things. So as long as it's fair and it's balanced and makes sense, you can come up with things beyond what's just in this list. I mean, this list has a lot of great ammo types anyways. Like I'm totally satisfied with this list, believe me. But, if you're creative, You can take it beyond that. You can come up with other ammo types. You can even combine some of these things. Like maybe you want to have an armor-piercing incendiary round or something, you know? Just make sure that whatever you combine, if something doesn't work with a certain, you know, shotgun shell and the other one works with a slug or a shell, that you can't combine things that don't work with certain ammo types. So just work it out with the GM. Make sure it makes fair sense and it's balanced. But yeah, you can always go beyond this list and invent other ammo types too, with the help of a tech, or if you're a tech yourself. So anyways, hopefully this crash course video was helpful and it gave you a little rundown of the different ammo types. Like I said, hit up the actual rule core book and get all the details from that. Check out the other crash course videos I'm putting out, so you can not miss any of the mechanics and things that I'm trying to help people understand. Make sure you subscribe to Cyberpunk Uncensored on YouTube and on Twitch. Check out all the links in the description. Show some love. I'd really appreciate that. So, all right, take care. I'll see you next time.